It'll never be now again. So here's some space weather. Major filamentary activity on the eastern and western limb, viewed here at 304 angstroms. Gigantic filaments associated with that active rising region. Also some serious filaments down here. And crazy filamentary activity associated with sunspot 2733. Check it out. And there are your magnetic field lines. Coronal hole rotating through. Magnetic complexity associated with this sunspot. And keeping an eye on this active region as it rises. Check out some more data at spaceweathernews.com. You see the X-ray flux has now flatlined. No coronal hole magnetic connection going on. As you can see, the phi angle is up here around 300 degrees, that is. Solar wind density. We see a big disparity between the ACE and the Discover here. Let's look at the real-time solar wind. Alright, so here's the real-time solar wind. We see the BT has dropped down a bit, and the BZ has gone into positive territory, relaxing the earthquake risk a little bit. You can see no sun-to-earth phi angle, coronal hole connection, or anything like that. Solar wind density is at 7.65 protons per cubic centimeter. And solar wind speed, 558 kilometers per second, so remaining at an elevated state. And we are expecting that to drop down throughout the day today. Here we see some magnetometer spikes. As we talked about yesterday, we will be looking at the Gong 2. KP index has dropped down to 3. Here's the Cygnets forecast. That needs to be updated. Here's your electron flux. We see some pretty wild fluctuations in that, so that's something to keep an eye on, although we're expecting this to level out as the coronal hole wind stream dies down. Some slight charging hazards here, Central America. And the F2 layer is looking what we would call normally anomalous for those of you who normally watch the channel. There's your aurora forecasts. Those should weaken throughout the day, moving on. And here's the Gong 2 synoptic ecliptic plane field plot. We look at this for two reasons. One, to monitor sunspot 2733. And two, to give us a better indication of the magnetic environment. This is a little bit harder to visualize, but because it stretches out the magnetic lines a little bit, it gives us a little better indication of what's happening. And by the way, those magnetometer spikes are associated with these magnetic regions here. When you see jumbled up lines, that equates to a weaker field. So we are expecting another magnetometer spike today as this stronger field gets entered and then abruptly weakening again as the Earth enters this jumbled field. Also, looking at sunspot 2733, it looks like it's still a sunspot. Now let's look at the other Gong 2 view, the one we normally look at the top view, ecliptic plane field plot. And just keep in mind, this is the same information, just presented differently. It is 1 hour and 16 minutes old. We'll let that play through again. Next, look at the sunspot number and the 10.7 centimeter radial flux. Sunspot number 0, obviously. We only count sunspots that are on the Earth-facing disk. And this 10.7 centimeter radial flux is down to 72. However, it is higher than predicted. Please note the extremely low predictions for 2019 and 2020. We're hoping the solar flux doesn't get that low, but that's the forecast, not by me. Next, we'll have a look at magnetosphere movies. Here's the velocity. See some of that high velocity area dissipating here toward the end. As some different variations of dense and less dense solar wind streams come in from the left. Here's your density. A bit of instability there. And you'll see some changes in the solar wind speed here, as well as the density. And here's the pressure. Magnetosphere actually quite strong right now. Next, let's look at geospace ground perturbations. Quite a bit of weirdness going on here. We see the magnetic field over Canada, very strong, up to 300 nanotesla. We see magnetic strength coming out of Hawaii, bleeding from Antarctica up into the southern Indian Ocean toward Australia, as we always do. Also some significant magnetic bleed down into Siberia there, kind of the second North Pole. We'll leave links. Here it is from the poles. Moving on. Quakes.globalincidentmap.com. Going back 11 hours here. Fiji gets a 5.3. Get out of the way, paintbrush. There we go. There's the recent activity in that area. Lack of a coronal hole magnetic connection lowers the risk a little bit, but we are still experiencing a drought for 7+ magnitude earthquakes. Let's see what else we got here. Russia, 4.6. Greece, a 4.5. 4.4 in Russia. 5.2 in Indonesia. And then a 5.3 and a 5.4 at Tonga. A 5.4 at depth. That is a risk factor for a larger magnitude quake. 4.5 at Chile, 4.6 at Indonesia. 5.4 at Tonga at 260 kilometers. Quite deep. .4 at Greenland. Oh, it's a pretty rare place. .4 at Indonesia, 4.2 in Mexico, 4.9 off of Greenland. And the largest quake since the Mexican quakes yesterday, a 6.1 at Indonesia. Check the location of that. Three quakes practically piled on top of each other. Moving on to volcanoes. Volcanodiscovery.com. Abico. 10,000-foot ash plume there. Kuchino or Abu Jima in the Ryukyu Islands with a 4,000-foot ash plume. Popocatépetl, 19,000-foot ash plume, so a little uptick there. Nevado del Ruiz, volcanic ash emissions reported. Reventador, 14,000-foot ash plume. Sabancaya, unable to detect, but suspected of erupting, obviously. And Planchon Peteroa, 14,000-foot ash plume. Next, we'll leave links to this site also. Give you a quick cosmic ray rundown. First, Athens, Greece. Here's Mexico City. Here's Moscow. A recent uptick in the last hour or so. And finally, the Oulu and Antarctica monitors. Here's Oulu, Finland. DOMC Antarctica. And here's DOMB Antarctica. Next, checking out theplanetstoday.com. Great solar system chart here. Keep in mind, if you're up before dawn, you'll be able to see these beasts, Venus and Jupiter in the eastern sky on the ecliptic. Been shooting that daily. Let's advance this 1 week so you see the 1 week from now forecast for where the planets will be. Mercury just passing in opposition. Moving on. In a previous video, we laughed and laughed and laughed over Apple blocking Facebook. Well, now they're blocking Google too. Yep. I guess Apple doesn't like your privacy being reduced by companies such as Google. So, yeah. Yesterday, Apple killed Facebook's access to internal iOS applications. Today, it did the same thing to Google. Google's application, dubbed ScreenWise Meter, appears to have been very similar to the spying technology that Facebook deployed. Users had to be at least 18 to be spied on and have their data mined, unless they were part of a family, in which case 13-year-olds could be spied on. Like Facebook, Google spied on Apple's enterprise certificates, which are only intended for internal use within a company to collect data on every aspect of a user's digital life. Well done, Google. Well done. By the way, please don't use Google as a search engine. Use DuckDuckGo. It doesn't track you. Google, the creepiest and worst company since the invention of the internet. We'll leave links to the article. Now we've got an article on ScienceAlert.com. We might have been wrong about ocean circulation, and it will have big impacts. Basically, what they're talking about is saltwater and freshwater mixing in the North Atlantic. Many different terms for this. Some people call it the North Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation. It has to do with salt and freshwater exchanging due to the Gulf Stream. And if that oscillation stops, Europe freezes. By the way, Europe is pretty frozen right now. We'll leave links to that article too. Value-added service, AccuWeather.com's Doppler radar. See some storms sitting around Florida area. And California is getting inundated with rain. Be on the lookout for things like landslides, mudslides, etc. Some scattered showers across Texas. And a little bit of snow in southern Canada. Next, we'll have a look at the NASA GOES interactive weather satellite here. This is the shortwave radiation animation. This is what we use to see clouds when it's too dark to see them with the visible satellite. We'll leave links to this too. Nothing too exciting to see here, folks. Next, we'll look at the NASA GOES water vapor map. Gives you a little better idea of what's going on. First of all, we've got sort of an atmospheric river situation, like this, being forced around this dry, massive air here in the center of the country. which is basically in control of U.S. weather patterns right now. And saving the best view for last, back to the sun at 171 angstroms. Let's do a zoom in of setting sunspot 2733. Magnetic fountain going on over there. Let that play through one extra time for you. While we say thank you, subscribers. We're nearly at 1,000. Unbelievable. Thank you, donors. We will be looking into getting some new audio equipment soon, some new computer peripherals to increase our live streaming abilities, as we've made these hundreds of videos every day on a $60 smartphone. I do have a PC. It's a good PC. It works well. But part of the purpose of these videos is to get them out because they are the epitome of time sensitive. Since these things, especially the sun's magnetic field, change with zero warning. Now, if you haven't pressed that like button, please do so. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. And if you enjoy the content, please share on your social media. We will be having David Devine on for our 1,000 subscriber special. And we'll be doing it all again tomorrow. Now remember, when you're staring at magnetic fountains, don't drink. And if you drink, don't drink out of magnetic fountains, because that's not liquid. And don't drive.